We have two. There we go.
Hey, a little behind the
Good
scenes.
morning. Good morning. I'm Teresa Coates. I am the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics, and we're back because it's Tuesday. So we're here. It's Sew Together Tuesday. We have a special kind of episode today where we're talking about embroidery. So it should be a fun one. We have um, lots of information for you, and then we're going to make a project with it. So it's a little bit different today. Before we get too far, we want to talk about a couple of things. One, it is Autism Awareness Month, and we have a blog post now up on our blog at shannonfabrics.com/blog that you can go to that has a whole bunch of projects that you can use as inspiration to make your own projects that are aimed at people with autism. So go ahead and check that out. You could also, on our blog, you will find the pattern for today's project as well as the show notes. Okay, so make sure that you check out the blog post for that. Also, you want to make sure and share the post, right? Or share what's the post, whatever we're doing here.
Share the
Share the
show.
show, share the video with your sewing friends. And if you do, you will be entered to win a little tote bag with a kit and a Sew Together Tuesday mug,
Ta-da!
just like I've got.
What
And did you want to show
what
your little vignette there,
what's
Hawk?
happening over here?
The little teddy bear is
The
hanging out over
bear
there.
is
It's getting it
not
some.
he's not feeling that well today, so he's got this little weighted eye mask thing on. Is that what we're
He has
talking
the weighted
about?
eye mask, which is gonna be a project in a couple of weeks, and
Oh,
he's
sorry,
a project
buddy.
that we did last year. And it's a little pillow that Hawk made, and the pet bed we made a couple weeks ago. So it's kind of like all together
But the
now.
eye mask is the important bit.
The eye mask is coming
Yes.
up in a couple of weeks. We'll be doing that project. So we had to do something with it, and so Hawk made a cute little vignette over there. So anyway. All right. So today, so make sure that you share the video. So, like I said, share it with your favorite sewing groups, friends, all that good stuff. Okay. At the end, we'll pick a winner. We'll pick two winners, one from Facebook, one from YouTube, and we'll give away a tote bag, a kit, and a mug, and some other tchotchkes that come in there, like some patterns and tip sheets and all sorts of stuff. They stuff in there for you and send it. So I know we've had a few winners who have posted over on the I Love Cuddle group, and that's been very fun to see their big packages because I don't have anything to do with it. We just put in the winners and then they get all this great stuff. So it's very fun to see. Okay, so are we ready to start our little project then?
Let's do it.
I
Let's
don't think we
talk
have
about
anything else.
embroidery.
All right. So today's project, we want to work on embroidery, and the project is specifically for people who have not started doing embroidery with Cuddle or have not done much embroidery at all. So I know when you're first starting out, it's really embroidery can be an expensive hobby to get into. So a lot of times people get smaller machines with smaller hoops. And what I found when I started doing embroidery a couple of years ago is that it was hard to find designs that would fit a smaller hoop. A lot of them are bigger. So I asked one of our brand ambassadors, Reen Wilcoxon, who runs Embroidery Garden, and I asked her specifically to make some designs that would work with this project that would also fit a 4x4 hoop. So we wanted to make them nice and simple, easy to stitch out, help you learn some skills with doing it, but also be an accessible project for everybody with an embroidery machine. So if you've got a nice big embroidery machine, you can do all sorts of fun stuff with it, and you probably know how to do that already. But if you're a beginner on the embroidery part, this project is for you. All right. So let's talk about embroidery with Cuddle. And some of the things, the biggest issue is really the stabilizing. Okay. And I will reiterate that a bunch of the information that we're going to talk about today is in the show notes that you can get from the blog. Okay. So that information is there. There's a couple pages of it. These are the designs. Let me show you that real quick. Those are the designs that come in the pack that Reen did for us. So it's called Bedtime Night Sky, and it's available from embroiderygarden.com. And I think she has it on sale for you right now. But like I said, all of these designs, these are printed out real size, 100%. So you can see that they're smaller designs that will fit in a smaller hoop, which is great. Okay. So one of the things that people have the biggest issue with when they're doing embroidery with Cuddle, and this was my issue too, was with the stabilizer, was stabilizing the Cuddle so that it doesn't pucker on you. And I know when I first started doing it, I didn't watch very many tutorials before I got started. So my designs didn't really turn out very well and had a lot of puckering. So I've talked with Reen and a couple of other our brand ambassadors who do a lot of embroidery, and we figured out some of the things that work best for it. Okay. So we're going to go through the things that don't work very well, and then we'll go forward. So this is one that I did with just a cutaway. I think it's a cutaway. Yeah. On the back. Okay, and you can see that this is what happens, this big puckering. All right, so this can be really frustrating when you're trying to do something, especially if you're embroidering it on a finished project. So I'm always going to suggest that you embroider it and then make the project. Okay, so just doing it on the, I've got two of them there, just doing it on the stabilizer or the cutaway doesn't really work. So this is on the cutaway still. Okay, I didn't trim it out yet, so you can see how it puckers. This one I cut it out. All right, so I cut it out, but you can see how badly it puckers up, even with the cutaway on there, which is what you want to use. Never a tearaway, use a cutaway. All right, this one is the way that Reen suggested I do it, which is with an SF101 on the back, and then with the cutaway. And this stabilizes it a lot more. So you can see if I flip this over that the puckering is really, really minimal. All right.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll show you how we hoop this and get that in just a second. But I want to show you a couple other things, because one of the things that people always ask is, can you embroider with Luxe Cuddle? You can, in fact. We did one where we did monogramming on Luxe Cuddle. Oh, that would have been just about a year ago. We were in Virginia at Bobbin and Bolt, and we did one about monogramming on Luxe Cuddle. So if you're interested in that, I would suggest go look for that video, and that'll be about monogramming on Luxe Cuddle. That'll show you. In this project, I wanted to try one with Luxe Cuddle for the star to see how that would work. I'm going to show you that one. Okay. And they stick to each other because of the oh no, this is the one I did two of them. That's right. So this one I did 2 layers. So this I popped some of the water soluble out. I'm going to do the rest so you can kind of see how it holds it down. When you pop that out, it just puffs right back up.
So that
which is
water
great.
soluble is the topper?
It's the topper. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but you'll see one of the things that happens is you end up with a lot of like kind of the nap comes out.
Some of the nap came out, some of it came outside of the satin stitch.
Right.
After.
And I can kind of pull some of this up, but it's not really going to pull.
So that's
all
something
of
that
out.
You can just sort of anticipate a little bit.
You can anticipate that it's going to be, and I've trimmed this. I tried to trim it really well, but it ends up coming out here. So I can go ahead and I can, try to cut it with my little scissors here, and I can give it a little bitty haircut. Okay, so it's totally doable. And honestly, you're only going to see the little bit if you get really close. So it is doable. Just know that you're going to have to give it a little bit of a haircut, because even if you're trimming it really close after you do that first stitch, which we'll talk about, you can still get some of it, because when it smashes it down, it smashes it out. There's no way. I could not figure out a way. I know a couple of people said they put their stiletto under there and like swoosh the nap inside, but I think that sounds very dangerous.
The nap to the inside of the
sounds very dangerous to get my stiletto near that very fast embroidery needle. So I don't recommend it. I recommend giving it a haircut later. This one I also did 2 layers of the stabilizer, and you can see I have even less puckery. Okay, so the 2 layers of the cutaway will hold it even better. And I know on some projects they will suggest that. So it's one thing I want to reiterate too, is that when you are doing embroidery projects with Cuddle, if you are doing them from a designer who has used Cuddle in the original design, like Reen has here, she will tell you all of the steps that you need to get the best outcome that you can. All right. On the show notes and in the blog, Reen goes through all of her steps very carefully. So we're going to reiterate them here. But if you want to make sure that you're doing it right, go follow the blog post. All right. So there's those. Get those out of the way. This one I wanted to show you because I like to experiment. I want to try things and see like, oh, well, what if it happens if I do this? So one of the things I had heard about was using a knit stabilizer instead of the SF101, but using a knit stabilizer and putting it on clockwise, I don't know, like at 90 degrees.
90 degrees, rotate the stretch so
that the stretch of the fabric goes this way and the stretch of the stabilizer goes this way, and it's supposed to negate it. But what I found is that it didn't really do that. So it makes it really soft, but it also didn't hold it as stable as I need to be. So the SF101 was the best one for that. So that's what we're going to use today. All right. I just try everything so that you guys don't have to do that. All right. So the other thing about embroidering is when you are embroidering with Cuddle, there is a different way of hooping it, and that we don't actually want to hoop the fabric. So when you hoop the fabric, you're squishing it all in. And what happens is what they call hoop burn. And I had never tried this because I knew from the beginning not to do it. So I did it yesterday and I stitched one out just to see what would happen. And this is what happens. And I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you see the hoop mark?
Yes, I see that it's kind of stuck in there.
It's just kind of stuck in there. So this here, and this has been sitting out of the hoop since yesterday afternoon. So I can totally see the line from the hoop that it made when it squished in there. All right, so don't hoop the fabric itself. We're going to float it. All right, and if you do it right, it comes out something like this, which is very exciting.
When you use the 2 layers back here, there's this 2-layer one. Mm-hmm. Is that stabilizer or SF101?
That is stabilizer. So that's 2 layers of cutaway stabilizer. Okay. So when it turns out pretty well. This is the Sweet Dreams design that I did when I changed all the colors. All right. And then this one I did, it's a lot of colors. And this one I did a white border on here. The one that we're going to use today, I'll show you. I actually did it with the blue border like she shows in the design. Then I also did it on a little lovey because I loved the project we did a couple of weeks ago. And so go ahead. So I just stuck it on that guy.
He's so cute.
So cute. So that's the project we did a couple weeks ago, Lovey Love from Melly and me. And then I went ahead and just embroidered it on the belly part. And then I cut it out. So I centered that right where the little applique was supposed to be. And just made him up yesterday.
He's adorable.
Right. And that one, so if you look at this one, let me show the box. So if you look at this one, we're going to see if we can get it so that the colors show. I didn't actually change the colors.
Oh, so all the letters are the same.
They're all the same.
Got it.
I just did the same color over and over again. Okay. So you can get a couple of different looks depending on what you want to do. We'll show that at the end because there are 3 variations on a theme. Okay. So like I said, she chose the designs. She has them in different variations. You can combine them. In the sample that she shows on the blog post, she actually took and she has a large enough hoop that she was able to arrange them in her software and cover the entire front with different designs with the little stars and I think the moon and the cloud. So you can do whatever you'd like. There's lots of freedom in it. You could rehoop it and put the embroidery designs in different areas if you want to. Lots and lots of options for you. I expect to see them on I Love Cuddle soon. Okay. So if you're not a part of that group, I really encourage you to join us over there. It's a fun group on Facebook and people always share their little posts. We had a ton of the lovey loves, so that was great. Okay. So let's get to putting the hoop together. So when we are doing this, I will suggest that you cut a piece. So in the pattern, we'll talk about the pattern in just a minute, but in the pattern, it tells you to cut a piece. It's, I think, 13 by 16. What I did was I cut it a couple inches bigger, just so I had a little wiggle room, that if I got it a little bit too low, I had some room below. If I got it to the left, I could cut it differently. So I suggest you make it a little bit bigger. I am not perfect about centering. And so that's something that I often have to kind of fix in my trimming. So, you know, if you want to cover yourself a little bit, that's the way to do it.
What machine did you use when you did all of this embroidery?
Oh, I did all of this embroidery on my BabyLock Pathfinder. So that's what I used for all of this. Okay. Yeah, and the reason we don't have both machines is because it takes up all the space and I need to sew today too. So I did all the embroidery beforehand. It also takes a while. So there's that. All right, so when we put the design on here, I have my piece that's cut larger than I want it to be, or that I need it to be. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark this, oops, with a, I think in the pattern it says at least 4 inches up. If you know it's going to be 16 inches tall, middle would be 8. I want it lower than that. So I'm going to put it 6 inches from the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to draw myself a little line here.
What's that pen you're using to mark?
It's just a little friction marker because it's going on the back.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. So this one is 13, which means half would be 6.5, right? Okay, so now I know where my center is, and that's where I'm going to put my SF101. Oh, what did I do? There it is. Okay. It's like I have pieces. So that's what this is. This is the SF101. It's a woven interfacing that has fusible bits on it. So we're going to iron this onto the back of the fabric. Okay. Because this is a polyester, this is a cotton with a fusible, we're going to put this on a heat setting that's more of a medium setting, medium high setting. So that I'm just going to use it for just a second to melt the glue. Okay. But we're not going to iron on the front of this. We're going to iron it on the back. I do want to make sure that my nap is going the right direction. So this is the bottom. Okay. If you ever get confused, go ahead and write on it. All right. I do it all the time when I'm working on things. So basically, I want to get my SF101 where it's going to be centered on the design. So I cut out a piece, I think that was 6 inches. Yep. So 6 inches by 6 inches about. The design is going to be smaller than that, but that way if I'm a little off, it's still okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring my ironing stuff over. I'm going to do a couple of things here. So
you got me nervous.
I know. I'm not going to leave it here for too long. I did this once before a few years ago, and I ironed, and I put the little Elisa travel iron on my mat, and that was a terrible idea.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I had to get a new mat. So we're just going to press it on here for just a few seconds on each spot and let it kind of melt that glue. It just has to melt long enough that it's going to stay there for just a minute. It doesn't have to stay forever. And in fact, on a bunch of them, I just loosened them up after I got done embroidering, which I don't know if you're supposed to do. But you'll also notice I used the friction pen. So when I used this, it disappeared. But if you remember a couple weeks ago, we showed it. If you put it back in the fridge,
it comes
it will all come back. So the friction pen will disappear while it's warm, but should it get cold, it's coming right back. Okay. Okay. So we get this melted on there well enough. Move this aside now. Bink. Put this back. It's going to come back in just a second, but at least I'll take the heat off of there. All right, so here's my hoop. I've got my little hoop. I've got my cutaway. Okay, the thing that I have found that it's important is to get this loose enough that you can pop your top in easily. Okay, you want to get this in one fell swoop if you can and get it as tight as possible. So getting it loose enough that it'll kind of just slide in. Okay, and then you'll tighten it up. So I'm only hooping the stabilizer, and then I'm just going to twist this until it doesn't want to twist anymore. Okay, and at that point,
it's like a
we
drum.
have a little drum. Okay,
nice.
So we don't want to push on it too hard, but there we go. There's that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spray the back of this little piece and plop it on. I'm just going to get my muslin here so that I don't spray on my table at all.
So this is the piece that has the SF101, and then you're adding D505 basting spray.
Yes.
Following that around. Ta-da.
Ta-da. Okay. So the other thing that I'm going to do real quick is I am going to put a little pin here and put a little pin here. That I think is about where my middle is. I'm going to measure it real quick because I forgot to do that first. And I want to get it fairly well. That's pretty good. Fairly well centered in my hoop here.
What about the stabilizer that's already sticky?
You could totally use that, and I have numerous times. Trying to get this centered. The piece is bigger than I want it to be.
So sometimes basically like some stabilizer has sticky on both sides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so there is a kind, we've used it on the show a couple of times. I can't remember which project we did it with, but it comes with a paper backing and you put it with the paper side up. Once you've hooped it, then you're going to cut that paper out and it's sticky. The problem that I've had with that I don't really love is when I have to cut around it, because that is sticky and kind of a pain to cut around. So this cutaway doesn't have that. It's easier to cut out.
To your scissors?
Yeah, exactly. It sticks to the scissors, it sticks to my fingers. It does work. It does work, and I have used it on a show. Okay, so I get this basically centered. All right. So you can make marks on the front. It scares me to mark the front of my fabric, honestly. So that's why I cut it bigger, get it basically where I want to. All right. So then the first part of the design that you're going to do is, I think it's called a stitch out. The embroidery people can come in here and correct me. Okay. You're going to do that first stitching part just like this. So you're going to have the cutaway, the SF101 on the back, and then your fabric. And then you're going to do the stitch out, which is going to show you where to put the applique. So this is when you're doing one of the applique ones that we showed you, like the star, the little moon, that sort of thing. All right. It's going to show you where to put your fabric when you want to put your applique down. So this is the next step. And I've just taped down my Cuddle and had it stitched in the exact same spot. So that's exactly again. Okay, so now I need to trim this out. Okay, so I'm going to move this stuff so I don't confuse anyone.
I just watched my screen go black and come back on again. I think we're okay, but that was a little nervy.
If we can get a little thumbs up, it'll be great.
Everybody's still there.
Okay, so then once this is stitched out, and this is important, this piece, I will say that this piece is just a little too small. If I were to do this again, I would make this probably 1/4 of an inch bigger on either side. So I'm going to measure this for you guys. So this one I did 3.5, and I would do it 4 inches next time. So to have plenty of room, because this I had to like be real careful.
So this is the part of the project that is considered the scrap buster, right?
Yeah, totally a scrap buster. Yes, because you can use any sort of Cuddle scraps for this. So this is what I used I used Cuddle 3 for all of these, except for that one where I did it with the Luxe Cuddle.
So we're back, we're good, but everybody says, yeah, we disappeared for a second. So very exciting. Yay.
We love it. Not really.
Technology, it's a thing.
It is. It's not always our friend. Okay, so I'm just going to cut around this. So you probably have duckbill scissors, and I do similar, but I forgot to bring them back into the studio this morning. So I'm just using my little Kais here, which work beautifully, in my opinion. And I'm just cutting as close as possible. So I kind of pull it up. See if we can get some light on there. There we go. So I pull it up, and then I just kind of shove the scissors underneath there as far as I can. I'm going to come back in here and get some of these little edges. So what I've found is that these little edges will drive me crazy if I don't get them trimmed out. So try to trim them as much as possible without trimming too much, but you can see you're always going to kind of trim a little bit of the bottom. So it's really hard to not get those two. I did try once when I was doing, I think the Fox one, and I tried to do it with water soluble between the layers so that I wouldn't cut the bottom layer at all, but that was not actually any better. So Reed suggests that you use this, which is totally a great idea. Just use your little lint roller, cut it right off. Okay, give it a little haircut. Now you're going to go, and this, just so you know, like in case you're new to embroidery, you can take this out of your machine and do this trimming, but you leave it in the hoop, okay? So the first few times that I was doing embroidery and I had to do this trimming, I thought you couldn't take it out of the machine. So I tried to do all that trimming with it underneath the needle. It doesn't work very well. So take the hoop out and then trim around, okay? Then you're gonna stick it back in your machine and let it do all the stitching. And then it comes to this point, all right? And it will hide any little haircut that you give the Cuddle because it has a wide satin stitch.
Oh, the satin stitch hides most everything.
Oh,
got it.
So I didn't mention.
Whoops.
So once you've done this, it's okay. I told myself, it's okay, Teresa, you're fine. Okay, then we put the water soluble on it. I like to use this tape. So this is really just kind of like, I don't know, it's embroidery tape. It's not super sticky. And I'm going to stick it on here. And then I embroider it. You can tape it on all 4 sides. Reen pins it around the edges. I've seen other people do that too. I would suggest that you do something to keep it in place. On the BabyLock, it doesn't move a lot between the stitches, so it'll stitch one part of it and it'll stitch another part and another part. And it doesn't move the water soluble at all. When I do it on the Bernina, that has a thing that gets the thread out of the way where it moves the foot really fast. And if you don't have your water soluble taped down or pinned down, it will grab it and rip it off for you. So make sure that you have gotten your water soluble tacked down nicely, just like this. Stick it back in your machine, do the stitch out, change the threads however you want to. Don't change the threads if you don't want to. Okay, then it looks like this. Sorry, I missed a step. We had to go over that again. Okay, so now at this point, this is all stitched out. This is just a metallic thread that I had that I thought would be kind of fun to add to it. So I did. So at this point, we're just going to take the water soluble off. So there are two kinds of toppers. This is a water soluble. There's also a heat soluble. And I will say that the water soluble is better, but do not use water to get it off. You just use your fingers to pull it off.
So some people earlier were talking about, there was a little side conversation going on about using water on a Q-tip to dissolve the water soluble just around the satin
Just
stitch.
around the satin stitch, you can do that. I found that if I kind of pull it with this guy with the little stiletto, I can get most of it out. So this little stiletto, and it all actually came out really nicely, but the little stiletto can come back in here and get, oh, is that a little bit? No, I got it. It just all came out. So the little stiletto here will get into those funny little pieces or places that it needs to get pulled out and be able to pull it out. All right, so that's what I use. I have heard of people using the water on the little Q-tip thing, but I know sometimes if it doesn't all go away, you end up with just sticky stuff in the nap of the Cuddle,
which washes
is kind of
out.
Which does wash out, but it means you need to wash it to get that out
before you give it away, or before you know.
Okay. All right. So are there any questions on that? Do we have any big questions? Ask me the questions now, because now we're going to move to making the whole project. But I just wanted to give you the basics on how you do the embroidery for it. Okay. If you have any questions, pop them up in there and we'll get them answered for you, or we'll go back later and answer them. Okay.
I think we're all caught up on general questions.
Okay. So at this point, you're going to go ahead and you're going to trim this at about 1/4 of an inch. It'll be stuck a little bit because of the basting spray that we've used. So make sure that you are cutting gently and kind of look what you're doing so you don't cut the fabric behind it. All right, and what I found is that if I cut all of this, and I cut it kind of roughly, but try not to be too rough about it, and then I can kind of come back and swoop some of it so it's a little neater. So like this, I don't want to leave a hard corner. I'll go ahead, oops. I can use my, if I had one more hand, it'd be helpful. Okay.
How can I help?
That's all right. You're all right. So the same with here, like I'll just kind of swoop around that. Okay, and that'll make it a little softer. I also found that if I pulled up the SF-101, it took away any sort of a mark on the front where you could see the line. So I just kind of
you leave it on there, but you just got it. You just pull it away.
Yeah, I just pulled it away.
Got it.
And that seemed to work pretty nicely. Like I said, when Reen did the whole thing, she just covered the entire front with the SF-101 and then left it like that. Okay, let's look at how cute that is. All right, so you can do that. If you have embroidery machine and you've been wanting to try it, this is a great way of doing it. It is totally a little scrap buster, and you can embroider all sorts of fun things with it. You can also applique on it. So Mary, one of our BAs, she posted, I think this morning, about doing a little applique on the front because she doesn't have a machine to do embroidery with. You can do whatever you want to embellish this bag, or not at all if you don't want to, but embellish is cute. Okay.
What was that color of yellow for that Cuddle?
I don't remember.
I believe it's banana.
Banana. That's what it is.
Banana.
I was like, Hawk looked it up this morning. I don't remember. I know it wasn't mango. Mango was the brighter one.
Yummy color.
That's the banana one. And that is a lovely color. Yep. It is a really, almost a buttery kind of yellow.
I want to do really a little side by side. This is mango. That is banana. Mango. Banana.
Yeah, so the mango is actually like a really good mango color. And I love mango, so it's a good color. Okay, all right, so I'm going to move all of this embroidery stuff out of the way. I'm going to show you, I'm going to get this stuff. We'll bring that over here. So this is the actual cinch sack. Okay, so now that we have gotten our front ready, now we can make the cinch sack. So Jeremy, can we pull up the ingredients list? There we go. All right, so for the sleep sack, we're going to want 1/2 yard of Cuddle and 1/2 yard of quilting cotton. So this is, I've made it so that it blends the two. It makes it a little bit easier and more stable inside with the cotton. You're also going to want two 60-inch lengths of cording. This can be clothesline that you make like the rope bowls out of, or I got some cording at a local craft store. You're also, of course, going to want a stretch needle because we're working with Cuddle, polyester thread, flower head pins, micro serrated scissors, the fabric clips from Clover, like Wonder Clips, and your walking foot, of course. And then optionally, those are the products that you're going to need if you're doing the embroidery, which would be the Bedtime Night Sky designs from embroiderygarden.com, water soluble stabilizer, that topper that we were using, the cutaway stabilizer that went on the back, coordinating embroidery threads, and the OD 505 basting spray. So that's what you're going to need to do this project the whole way with all of the embroidery and all of the good stuff the way we're doing it. Okay, the pattern, you can download it. Super cute. One of our friends from Casey Maker, she came over with her daughter and let us take pictures of her wearing the little cinch sack, and it's adorable. How to do it. We disappeared again.
Yep, it did. It
Oh.
just blacked out on us for a second again.
Okay.
I think maybe
All
time
right.
to reset the internet in the entire office.
All right, we're gonna do it,
Not,
but not right this
during
minute.
the show.
Not right now. We're gonna give it a second. All right, so I've got all of my pieces. I cut them out in the pattern. It tells you how big to cut out all of the different pieces for your cotton and your Cuddle. For the Cuddle, we need two 13 by 16-inch pieces with the embroidery design or applique design on it. You could also do, you know, initials or all sorts of cute little things on here. But the little embroidery designs we have are adorable. Okay, so let me move my cotton stuff. I want to show you really quick before we get too far, just the difference that this made when I did a white border and when I did a blue border. Just a totally different look, in my opinion. I really like it. I like it with the blue, and that's what she suggested, and I broke the rules right away, and I was like, I don't know, I think I'm going to use just white. And then I was like, okay, she was right. Blue is cuter. So we're going to do it with the blue today. All right, so I've got my two pieces of the Cuddle, and I'm just going to put them to the side because I don't need them right this second. They're ready to go. And then I've got all of my pieces that are cut otherwise. And this is a little bit funky the way that we're going to put this together. So hopefully we can walk through it and it will make sense. This is the lining front, and that's cut the same size. And then we've got some other pieces that are going to create the lining back. I'm going to do that in a second, and the pocket. And then we've got our pieces for the casing, the channel, and the loops. Okay, so this is just folded over, folded in half, and create these casings. What I want to show you is how I got these really neat little hems here. Because for me, getting these to fold over neatly is not always super easy. And especially when you're dealing with a little 1/4-inch hem that you're going to fold in and fold in again, it's hard to get those accurate. But there's a neat little tool that I wanted to show you guys. I'm going to show you how it works. So it is this tool here, which I have talked to a lot of people who have been like, oh, I bought that at some craft show. I didn't know what it was once I got home. So it's a Clover fabric folding pen, and it comes with this little liquid. It's the magic liquid. Okay, fabric folding pen liquid. Comes with this and your pen, and all you do is you fill up this little tube and kind of undo it, fill it up with some water. Okay, and then we're going to put a couple of drops of this stuff in it. And I don't know what this is except magical. Okay, so I'm putting some little liquid drops in there. Let it kind of mix around a little. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this so that it will start to soak into this tip. So what I have found is that you don't want to leave the water in the pen and just let it sit in your tool thing. Make sure that you either set it up or empty out the water, okay? Because we want it to this tip to stay dry. But we're gonna keep squeezing it till it gets liquid comes out, okay? So now I can see like, okay, this is filled with liquid.
But you can't leave it. You can't leave it overnight. In between projects, you want to empty it. Otherwise,
between projects, yes.
Right. Otherwise, it'll what happens?
It can get a little icky on the end. Okay.
Like mildewy,
like
moldy,
mildew or
funky.
something. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to move this because it's kind of a two-parter here. So what I need to do is I'm going to use this piece here, and we're going to make the loops, how we're going to do the loops. So the loops are 2 inches. You cut it 2 inches wide, and we need to fold it in half and then fold it in half again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it at the 1 inch line.
And you're using that fancy
And I'm
pen.
using the fancy pen. It just leaves a little wet spot there down the middle. I'm just going to fold it.
Oh, wow.
And it just folds. Okay, super nice. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in here at kind of a scant half. And I'm going to do it again. And then it stays. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over and give it a little iron. Okay, just so it stays there nice and neat for me. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Little bitty 1/4 inch hems, as I did it at a 1/2 inch and then a 1/4 inch. This one I did it at 1 inch and then a half. Okay, same idea. I'm just going to take it and just fold it right along that line. Isn't that magical?
Those are really crisp.
They're really crisp. It gets a very nice edge. Now I get to give it a little press again. Super easy to do. Okay, so it's one of those weird little tools that is just kind of random, and sometimes you'll see them hanging at the quilt shop and you have no idea what you would ever do with it. That's what you do with it. Okay, super duper easy. So that's the easiest way to make these little the little loops that we're going to make at the bottom, or to make the edges on your casing. Okay, so it's just kind of a magical little tool. I wanted to share it with you guys. All right, so now I'm going to show you how we do the stitching on this. Then we can kind of put things together. So what I like to use is my stitch in the ditch foot. All right. So this is used for quilting, and it's usually referred to as a stitch in the ditch foot. Sometimes it'll be edge stitching. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick this on here. Okay, hold on. I'm going to make the foot go down, and then I can pull it up with my presser foot lever to get it to come down where I want it to, get it to snap into place. All right, so then I've got a few things here I want to show you. So I've got my straight stitch, and I'm going to put it at a, oops, I'm going to put it at a 2, and I'm going to put it up to a 3 because this is kind of top stitching, and we're working with the cotton. So a 3 is more top stitching for this. And then I'm going to shift my needle so that my needle is going 1 millimeter off of center. All right, so that's where it's normally is at center. I want it to be off just a little bit. And I'm going to stitch just a little bit on my leader ender here, mostly because I'm going to be trying to get this little thing in, and I want to make sure that it has something to kind of attach to first. All right, so I've stitched just off that, and now I'm going to go ahead and stitch this in. And I'm just going to let it run right along the edge of that foot. And it will do the top stitching super neatly. Okay, so I don't have to watch any spot on there to make sure that it's nice and even. It's just going to do it. And I'll get to the end. I'm going to stitch across and then go down the other side. Okay, so super nice, easy way of doing this to get a really nice top stitch. And it's kind of funny because it's one of those things that I've used for a long time that people will be like, wow, that top stitching is beautiful. And I'm like, thanks. It really wasn't my doing. It was the machine. Okay, to get a really nice little top stitch edge.
Oh, that looks lovely.
Okay, and you saw, not hard at all. All right, and this is how the loops are made, and then they're cut at 4 inches. All right. Okay, so I'm going to get all my stuff back over here again. I've got my casings here, here. Here's that little piece that I made before. All right, so just like that, I just made a longer piece. I'm going to go ahead and iron this really quick. You can look over the pieces. I should have ironed it before. And
Something is ironing is happening behind me. We're just gonna,
I
so as not to make everybody dizzy, we're just
right.
gonna stay here.
Just stay there. Okay. So now I've got 2 casings, one with a little Humpty Dumpty, one with a little elephant. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the casings on and the loops. And I think the loops are the first part, and then we'll do the casings next. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this into 2 4-inch sections. So if I measure this at 0 to 8, I can cut off this little tail. There we go. So here I'm going to measure up. There's 8. And then I can measure in half. There we go. All right. So now I've got 2 pieces. I'm going to put these onto my outside. The front is what I'm going to put them on. And where I want to put them is 1 inch up from the edge. So I can measure 1 inch up. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this down. And I'm going to pin it in position. Okay, and then I'm just going to flip this up and over here and pin it down again. Okay, and we'll do the same thing with the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll side
So-
by side.
So super easy placement. And what this does is lets us so that we can have that whole loop there without having too much thickness. Because if I put these here, then I've got a really thick spot right here. So this kind of gives it a little bit of style, but also keeps it flatter in that little area.
Got it. It doesn't tax your machine quite so hard.
Yep, exactly, because we're gonna have these 2 layers and then the other layer of Cuddle. So you end up having kind of a lot of thickness in that one little spot. All right. Also, we'll kind of spread out the pulling on it. What did I do with my other foot? It disappeared. Oh, here it is. It got swooped. So it'd be like yesterday we looked for the O'Deef lid. He gave it to me and I immediately lost it. Come on. There we go. That sounded like it was really strangeful and it actually wasn't, I promise. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch this at 1/2 inch, just shy, because I will catch it again when I actually sew the side seams. So I'm going to keep the pins in as long as possible and keep those sides as straight as possible. So as it comes around, I'm going to kind of tweak them just a little, make sure they're staying where I want them to be. So this is really just a basting stitch. If you're going to give this to a kid who's, going to tweak it around a lot, you could definitely stitch it a couple times. Some kids are more apt to swing things by the cords than others. I'll let you make that call on how much it needs to be tacked in. Okay, so now we've got those in position, and then we're going to put the casings in as well and get that here. So this goes in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold this, and I'm just going to kind of finger press it. I'm going to go ahead and fold this and find out where the center is, and I'm going to put a pin in there. And that way I can open this back up and know where the center is. And now I can make my piece match. So what I want to do is get it so that when it's open that this is face up. If I did it this way, the pictures are upside down, which is not a huge deal, but this is how I do it. Okay. I get that finger pressed to match with the center there. Go ahead and pin it a few times. And then we'll take to the machine and stitch it. We'll do the other one first so I can just kind of stitch them both at the same time. All right. I'm going to do some funky pinning here. I'll be like, why are you pinning it that way? And say, because I want this to stay in position. But I think these will hold it along the edge. So now we'll do that to the other side as well. So the only thing that's tricky about this side is I want to make sure that I'm pinning it on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and pet it. Make sure that I'm pinning it to the right side. It's not, you know, critical if it doesn't,
the
but
correct side.
the correct direction.
Okay.
Yes. So that the top is running, or the nap is running down the fabric. Okay, so go ahead, find the middle. Find the middle again. I'm just going to finger press that, make sure that it's right sides up. Put that in position. Okay. Great. Is everybody doing okay out there? No pressing questions? Not yet.
Not yet. I think
Okay.
we're okay. I think I'm just mesmerized by watching you sew. So.
All right. Wait, did I just do that? Oh no, that was right. Okay. Okay, so now let's go over and sew those in position 2. So again, this is sort of a basting stitch. I'm just going to do with my regular, it's a 3.0 stitch length, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch it in as if it were just the real one, because it'll give it a little extra oomph later. So as I'm going here, I can see that that got pulled just a little bit when I was doing it. So I'm just going to move that over and make it stay where I want it to. So they will kind of move a little bit, and that is okay. Okay. I'm going to shift it a little, kind of repin it. All right. If they don't match up evenly, it's really all right. I promise. It won't make any difference. We built some flexibility in there. All right. So there's one. And there's the other. Oops, sorry. So again, I'm going to kind of repin that now that I can see from here. Get them to match just a little better. Okay. Now I do a little back stitch, make sure it stays where I want it to. All right. So I've got the front, the back and the front. Get my extra pins out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch these up. Okay, and I'm just going to pin these. I'm going to pin my important spots first. Okay, so always my corners and then in between. Then we're going to do some double pinning because we're doing cuddle to cuddle to keep it to be where we want it to be. All right, so I'm just going to pin right along this edge. So again, I'm going to do the middle. I'm going to do another one in the middle. Over here. And then we'll do the double pinning like we want to do when we're sewing with Cuddle, just to keep it all together. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew around it this way. So in kind of a big U and creating this bag shape. So I did one side. I'm going to go ahead, do here, get that corner to match up, because then I can kind of tweak the fabric a little bit as I need it to get it to lay where I want it to, make it do the thing I need.
Show it who's boss, Teresa.
Show it who's boss. That's right. It will listen to me. At least, you know, sometimes. We've often described the fabric as being a little teenager-esque. You tell it what to do, and sometimes it sort of does that, and sometimes it doesn't. Kind of has a mind of its own. It's figuring out where it wants to be in life. Sometimes a little disobedient. Okay, so again, just making sure that my edges match. Okay, so I'm not going to worry so much if this is flat in here. I know it's going to work because I cut it right. At least I hope I did. Yeah, yesterday we were cutting some fabric. You remember you cut it and then we moved it and it seemed like it was a half an inch off, and then you moved it again and it was totally fine. That,
yes.
That's what Cuddle likes to do. So yeah, we just try to make it do what we want it to do. And sometimes we just have to trust that it will work out okay. So believe in yourself when you've cut it accurately. Know that you cut it accurately and then make it behave. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go and I'm going to sew these 3 areas that I've pinned. And we're just going to sew all the way around. Again, 1/2 inch seam allowance, 3.0 stitch length. Oh, we didn't talk about what this pretty color is, did we?
Oh, we did not.
So this pretty color is the coral, is that right?
That's correct. C3 coral.
Which I really do like. It's very nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and take out any of these pins that I'm gonna hit. So I could definitely have pinned that second row over just a little bit, like that one, because then I can leave the pins in and not worry about hitting them at all.
And that's really the big key to that inside row of pins, is that you hopefully can just leave it in place, and the flat head of the flower head pin just goes right under the walking foot. Or
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm gonna get down to the bottom. It grew just a tiny bit on me and I don't really care. I'm just gonna let it turn and start taking it from there. Okay, and again, I'm gonna do a little back stitch there because I know that that seam's gonna get some pressure, especially if I put anything heavy in here. You know, we talked about putting, you know, just Lovey and PJs, but if it were me as a kid, I would have this full of books because that's what I did. When I was going anywhere, I had to have books. All right, so we're gonna get to that corner, do a little back stitch, back over here and turn again. Okay, so I'm actually going to put my foot up and my needle up, and I'm going to move over just the tiniest bit because I want it to catch that seam. I don't know if you guys can see, that's where I sewed the little loops in right here, and I want to make sure it catches that so I don't have to go and take those out, so I just moved it over a little.
So you're basically making sure that those tack down stitches are in the seam allowance.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Because if they aren't, I have to go back. Ouch, excuse me. Got myself good there. I have to go back over and redo it, and I don't really want to. Okay. Want to get up here?
No bleeding
right.
on the show, Teresa.
I'm going to try not to. Not today. Just nabbed me. All right. So now we'll get all the pins out. I'm going to go ahead and turn this, see if we need to pop out those corners a little more. I can have them a little rounded. They'll be a little fluffy in here, but I'm going to go ahead and clip those because I think it will look nicer. So I'm just going to clip up to the corner and then kind of around the corner. Take out bulk there. Do the same thing here. My little scissors, chuck it, all good. All right, so now we can turn this inside out. Pop out those corners. And again, there's my SF101. So that's I told you I loosened it up.
Mm-hmm.
See, I snipped it. That's another good thing about this is like if you start to snip something, it's not your real fabric, it's your SF101, which is good because sometimes that happens. All right. So look at that, we're almost there. All right, so now we've got the outside of it, and we've got the inside, front, and now we're going to make the back. So this is a little funky construction that's actually kind of fun. I really do like this. So what we need to do is we need to find the center of all of these pieces. So this is the top, the bottom, and the pocket. All right,
Oh,
so
there's a little pocket inside.
So this little pocket. So we're going to do this today without any sort of a closure. If you want to, you can absolutely do a little snap on here, a little piece of Velcro, whatever you want to do to hold it shut. We just left it so it'd be open, and you can decide how you want to do that if you want to do it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finger press this in half. Okay, I'm actually going to mark this so we can see it a little bit better.
You can see it pretty well.
Can you see it okay?
The side light is actually helping.
Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do the same thing here.
Are all these pieces, the sizes are in the pattern?
The sizes are in the pattern. Yep, exactly. Okay, so now we're going to sew this pocket in between these two. We'll end up having a pocket. It's going to be like this. Okay, so it's like a hidden little pocket in here. So what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold this in half too. I'm going to finger press it. And then I'm going to make that center match with that center. I'm going to just pin it a couple of places. And we're going to do all of these seams. Again, we're doing this all with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I will also say that I am doing all of the sewing with the cotton with my stretch needle, and it was not a problem. I've made, I don't know, 3 of these things now, and it wasn't a problem. So we'll keep checking that stitching, because we know that if we use a universal needle with Cuddle, you get skip stitches. But with the opposite of sewing cotton with a stretch needle, I haven't had any skip stitches. So I think this is weird and also interesting. Okay. So we go ahead and back stitch here, stitch all the way across. What I was doing over there is resetting my needle to be in the middle. Okay, back stitch, cut my thread. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with the other end.
Stand by for a second.
Sure.
Can we look at the pattern again?
Mm-hmm.
Where are the overall measurements for all of these cotton pieces?
Right here.
There you go. Ta-da.
Okay, they're all listed on there. And it explains what they are, and then this is where we're at right now, in that weird chase. Okay, so you can see we're halfway there. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finger press again. I got a little not very straight cut there. I don't know what happened. We're going to say the ruler slipped. That's what we're going to say. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finger press that. I've got my little mark, so it'd be easy to come back to. I'm going to make those match. And I'm going to pin one more time across this edge, beginning and end of that pocket. Okay, so we're sewing the pocket to the top and the bottom of the back. All right, so it's this weird piece. All right, it will make sense in just a minute. This is one of those places.
So, 'cause I'm lost.
This is definitely one of those places in classes where I'm like, all right, just hold on. I promise it will make sense. And then you'll be like, wow, that was cool. But sometimes in the middle of it, it doesn't seem like it.
And you're also, not only did you not change your needle, you're also still using polyester thread.
Yep.
You're still using the walking foot, the
Yep.
digital dual feed in this case.
Yep.
You didn't change anything about the machine at all.
I didn't.
Nope. And it's working.
Nope.
And you didn't, no presser foot pressure change.
Nope.
No.
And I could looking at my stitches here to make sure I'm not skipping anything, and they are all looking fine. Okay. So if you wanted to, I could have dropped this down to 2.5 for the cotton. At the 3, it's fine for what this is. Not a big deal. All right. So now I'm going to go over here like this. And I'm actually going to give this a little press. You can follow me around if you want to. And I'm just going to press this toward the seam allowance on both of these sides. And really, I want to do that with the cotton just so it kind of stays where I want it to a little better. All right. Okay. Okay, so now we're at that funky stage. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half and bring these 2 edges together, and I'm going to sew here and here.
Oh.
And it creates a little pocket.
That is a great little method of making a pocket.
It's pretty weird, but works. And I've done it in lots of different projects before, and it actually works really nicely. So at this point, if you wanted to add the little Velcro in there, you absolutely could, or a little snap. This is when you'd want to do that. And go ahead and put that in there. All right, I'm just going to pin, move this so that it's nice and flat. And all I did here is make sure that my pocket seams are matching here. And it's really one of those things I can't show you very well, unfortunately. But just know that that's what you should kind of make those match there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing over here. So let me show you on this one. So I can see these 2 seams, and I'm just going to butt them up to each other, lay them down.
We got it.
Okay. Then I can,
that was a good shot of what
good.
we were talking about.
Because then all I'm doing is trying to make them match. And I'm going to force them to match the same way I do with the Cuddle, is like you're going to make it match in the important places. So we want the corners to match and then in between. All right, so that's what we did. So these were the important places. Then we got a pin in the middle. Let's sew it again. I am going to bump the stitch length down to a 2.5 here, because this is where we'll actually get some stress, because if there's weight in the pocket, it's going to be stressed on this seam here. Okay, or if something goes shoving out the side, it'll put stress on that seam. So the seams that we're getting the stress on, we want to make sure that we're getting those nice and tight. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to actually steer it just the tiniest bit over the stitching from before to about 1/2 inch over. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to back stitch just a little.
Oh, and we're still using
that.
a 1/2 inch seam allowance too. You probably said this, and I'm just catching up.
It's okay.
I was also reading.
Were you reading comments? That's okay. No problem. Yep, so still using the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Do the same thing. I'm going to go over here. You could start over here and stitch the same direction. That might be best practices, but this is what I do. It feels like I'm just continuing. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to stitch past this. I'm going to stitch just past the seam that I sewed the pocket on. Okay. And what that's hopefully going to do, I'm going to actually lift my needle and move it just the tiniest bit so that I catch the seam inside, so that, again, those seams are that side of what I'm sewing now. I'm trying to feel just a little. And I'm going to go ahead, come on over to the edge. There we go. All right, so now we have a little pocket. Bink, bink.
That's such a nice finish.
Clever, right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press that again, just so it looks nice. Okay, so at this point, it'd be really easy to just stick a little snap in there or stick a little piece of Velcro, do a little sew on Velcro.
Hold on, folks. Are we back yet? I know I saw that we blipped, we blacked out. I'm going to hold off for a second and ask Teresa to just be patient with us also and see if the video comes back. Okay. Wow, 4 times in one show.
That's super weird.
That hasn't happened since we moved to the new studio. So nothing's changed.
I think
we're back.
The internet just saying, you guys should be on the road again. Just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Just
don't do
it.
Don't make me get the Starlink out again.
All right, so there's our little pocket, nice and pressed. Okay, you could put a little elastic here and a little button here and make it close, or vice versa. You could do all sorts of things to close this up if you want to, okay? But you don't have to. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew these side seams.
Leanne, you're totally right. It's the electromagnetic storms. Everybody else gets Aurora Borealis. We get video glitches.
Yay. Okay. All right, these seem to be slightly longer now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip this, because as I pulled this down, I could see that my pieces aren't cut perfectly, and it's fine. I just want to make sure that I'm catching it on this side so that I'm actually catching all of it. Okay. I'm going to go over here and do the same thing in the corner. Give it a little tug. And I'm going to go ahead and pin in between. And one more at the bottom, and then we'll stitch all the way around this just like we did with the Cuddle. Okay. And again, we're leaving it with a 2.5 stitch length for the cotton to make it nice and tighter, so it will stitch and hold nicely. Okay. So we're doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around.
I'm still having a hard time getting over the fact that you didn't change any of the things
No.
about the machine, the needle, the thread, none of that. And it's just cruising through this cotton.
It's totally fine. And I kind of had wondered when we did the Lovey a few weeks ago if it would be a little bit of an issue, and it wasn't. And I thought, well, maybe it was just because we did just a little seam, and turns out it's fine. So that's good to know. Because like I said, it's an issue if you're doing it the opposite way.
So that seems like a fairly consistent 1/4 of an inch difference in the length.
That was me probably cutting something wrong.
Okay, I'm not trying to point it out that it's bad. I'm just saying if it's like this, it's okay, right?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Because you know what's going to happen is that the inside of the bag will be slightly shorter than the outside of the bag, which is actually good. Because then if something goes into the bag and weighs it down,
it doesn't push on the outside. It doesn't push
on the outside of it.
Okay. Yep.
I mean, I meant to do it this way. I meant to do it this way just to show you guys and be able to see.
It's not a bug. It's an undocumented feature.
Right. In quilting, we call it, it's a design choice. It's not a mistake. It's a design choice. And I think in this project it is too. Yeah. I had a couple of fancy things to show you guys today, including that one, right? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to whack that off. And I'm actually just going to trim that seam allowance just a little bit smaller. Mostly because I want it to not kind of conflict with the Cuddle. Okay, these Quilters Selects, you know how they don't slide? They also don't slide. Which is great, except when I wanted it to slide. And then it was like, okay, now we're just going to move the whole thing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim the corners here too. Just the same way. Trim off a little bit of that bulk. And mostly it's so that they don't compete down there. That's why I wanted to trim that and cut those corners.
Got it.
All right, so now we've got kind of 2 pockets. All right, so there are a couple of ways, one inside the other.
Blackout
and
again.
then sew them. Oh, geesh.
Blip, blip. But we're back.
Okay, we'll do a hard reset and hopefully next week is all good. All right. So what I want is these 2 to fit together nicely. So I will tell you that once I've had it work just fine like this, and then once I had to turn it so that I could have the Cuddle have a little stretch to it to get it to fit. Okay. This one looks like it's going to work out just fine. If you get this in here and the Cuddle seems a little smaller than the cotton, remember that the Cuddle has some stretch. Okay. So you can definitely
recommend that.
No, but you could definitely just make it fit.
Okay.
That's all we're doing. Just make it fit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open these seams because you don't want to stretch it a 1/2 inch, but if you have to stretch it a 1/4 inch to fit, one of the joys of Cuddle. So we'll do that. So I'm going to pin here and again pin here. If you want to be extra careful, you could pin your front and back centers. Make sure that those match and then pin them. I'm just going to hope for the best. All right. So pin that open, and then I'm just going to kind of lay this as straight as possible and pin these together. And I'm just going to pin, because I'm going to sew it in a circle, I'm going to pin perpendicular for all of it, and making sure that the cotton on here should be basically with the top there. So I'm just going to kind of make them match, and then I'll sew that with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, and I shouldn't have to pin too much. We'll see. If I have to go back and pin more, I will. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of a few pins, even if they did try to eat me today. That was the best stab I've had, I think, in a while. Sorry, guys.
I didn't see you bleed on anything. Really.
I didn't. It just grabbed me.
Also, you're so calm. Yeah.
I gasped. I usually don't gasp when it gets me, and that was a good enough one. So you could go ahead and we could take this free arm off and sew this around in a circle. Makes it a little bit easier than trying to sew it around in a circle this way. So if you have the ability to do that, go right ahead. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew this again. 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm leaving it at the 2.5 because this is going to get some stress on the seam. And we're just going to sew all the way. Oh, you know what I didn't do?
No.
Leave a turning hole. I just realized it.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Now I'm going to stop when I get over this seam and we're going to go backward. Somebody, I can't believe nobody commented. Oh, probably because they thought I would leave the turning gap up here. I can. I can, but it's better
Where
in the
was it?
side.
Where was it designed to go?
It's designed to be in the side, and I'm actually going to go back and do it because the first one I did. So here we go.
Oh my gosh, guys, awesome. All right.
Okay, because the first time that I did this, I did leave the turning hole up here, which is probably why like my thought process was this is where you're supposed to go. Also, this is what happens when you don't read a pattern while you're making stuff. But what happened is I had to do my turning hole up here and hand sew that closed, and that was harder to do sewing the cotton to the Cuddle for one thing, but also it left an uglier seam up here because I couldn't make that look nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here. If Rose is watching this, she's like, Teresa, I wrote it in the pattern. I know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to mark a 4-inch gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to stitch it and go up, and I'm going to do the same thing here and make my little L brackets. We did this once before, but I got all the way to the end before I realized I didn't leave a turning hole. I don't remember where we were. It was when we were in Los Angeles at the studio at the house. And we got all the way to the end, and then I went to try to turn it, and I couldn't turn it. So it's definitely happened before. I think it's pretty funny because, okay, raise of hands, ladies out there. How many of you have done that where you've made the whole thing, didn't have a turning gap? I want to see some hands. I know I'm not the only one. Okay. And again, I'm just doing the little L bracket like we do in most things with Cuddle.
So that little L bracket is like a reinforcement stitch. Where'd it go? I lost it. It's in there somewhere.
It's right here.
There it is.
On the purple.
Okay. And then what's gonna happen? Do you actually?
I have to go get a blade so that I can.
I was like, where's?
Because I don't have a blade on me.
Where's your seam ripper?
So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to cut those stitches out. So I cut the stitches out of cotton just like I do out of Cuddle.
Oh.
Except if it
Except
turns
for
black.
the glitch, yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of work the tip of the blade underneath the thread. And then, because I love this tool so much, I can come back in here with my stiletto and pop those threads out. If I can't get it at the right angle.
Because the camera's in the way.
It's because the camera's in the way and I'm doing it underneath the foot here, basically. Okay, I'll just pop these right out. And now I'll have a turning gap. See, that didn't take too much longer. We're still going to get done sooner than I thought we might, so that's good. Did we have anybody raise their hand? Did anybody say they'd done it? I was like, please tell me I'm not really alone.
There are some brave, truthful sewists in the audience.
I appreciate it.
Don't leave her hanging.
I've done it. One of the first big throws that I did, big Cuddle throws, I forgot to leave the turning hole, and I sewed around all 4 sides. For some reason, you can't turn it inside out when you do that. So that was probably my first experience of taking out a lot of stitches. I was like, all right, there's got to be a better way. Okay, let's get back to it. Now we have a turning hole. We'll see if Jeremy can do some fancy editing with this afterward.
No. No. You can't take stuff out of the middle.
We can't.
All right. You can trim the beginning and the end, but you can't take stuff out of the middle.
No, so now you know that's how you do it if you forget your turning hole. It's really not terrible. We'll see if there's any other step I forget. Knock on wood, we don't have many more left. Okay, and again, I'm just feeding it around the free arm here, making sure. So one of the things is this, because it's Cuddle 3, it's like it's a thinner knit, so it will want to curl like knits tend to do. So I'm just trying to keep it flat as I go into there, make sure it's actually staying where I want it to and not curling too far. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of go over where I stitched before, do a little back stitch, cut my thread. All right, put that back on there. All right, I'm gonna clean up my tools. We've got a few out right now. Can get a little cacophonous. All right, so now I'm going to find my new turning hole. I mean, the turning hole that was there the entire time. I'm sorry if you guys missed it.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Okay, just gonna turn this out. Okay, so this is the part that used to always confuse me when I would make bags. Is I'd get to this point and I'd be like, I don't understand because now I have two bags. One has to go inside the other. But you do have to turn it all the way out and then back in.
Nice.
Okay, so now get those back in there. So at this point, this little turning gap, no, that's the pocket. There we go. We can go back over to the machine. Actually, let's do that. I'm just going to pop this just like I do with the Cuddle ones. Okay. And you can see
the L bracket just
the
flips
L
the
bracket.
seam allowance right inside.
Yep. So then I can go ahead and I'm going to give it a little finger press and then sew right along that edge. And I could do this with a zigzag if I wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and just do it with a straight stitch. Make sure that I'm catching both edges. Again, a spot that you could do with your the edge stitch foot if you wanted to. I meant to do a back stitch. Okay, there we go.
And it's buried down the side of the bag. Nobody will ever see it.
Nobody ever cares.
Great.
Yep. Okay, so go ahead. Stick that in there. Okay, I'm gonna get it. Just want to go all the way down to the bottom. All right, there we go. So now you could go ahead and you could press this again if you want to. It's totally fine. You could do a little stitching around this if you wanted to stitch this down so that this stayed nice and even. I didn't do it on any of mine and it was totally fine. And one of them even got used pretty good. So, all right. So now we've got the bag. It's done basically except for the cording, which we're going to do. So this is the cotton cording that I got. And it is, you need two 60-inch lengths. Really, it's kind of more like 40-inch, but we want to give you 60 inches so that you can have too much, really, because then you can figure out how much you want. I'd rather have too much than not enough. Okay, so we're going to cut off a few inches here. So it looks like about 3 inches. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I already got one end cut, so I'm going to cut off 6 inches. Except I lost my little piece of tape that I left. So I'm going to use another piece of packing tape. What happens if you don't tape this before you cut it is that you lose all this end. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap some tape around that. And then chop it right in the middle. Okay, now I'm going to fold this in half and do the same thing there. Okay, so this is where I want to do it, ish. So we're going to do this, and then you'll be able to trim it to exactly the right spot, but this will get you pretty close. All right, go ahead. Sure. Cut that in half. There we go. And then I'm going to take my little safety pin here, and I'm going to feed it through. So I'm going to stick it through the end of where the tape is, just because that will hold it a little bit tighter. And this is the funky part. So we're going to go ahead and pin this, or stick the pin through here. And I want to make sure it gets fed in, and then I'm going to feed it through this channel, and then I'm going to feed it back through the other channel. So this is the part that always kind of confuses people just a little bit. But you're going to see how it works really nicely when we do it this way. Okay. So doing the little hems at the end here, that will help for this to be a little stronger too as we put these through. Okay. And there are a few different tools for this, but honestly, the safety pin works really well. This one. Okay, so now got it fed all the way through. I'm going to kind of even it up so it's about halfway. Okay, now I take one end and feed it through this loop. I take the other one, and it's not fed through the loop, and then they're going to get knotted. And what this does is it gives it a little thing to pull to cinch it closed, hence the name, and it also creates a little backpack handle.
Oh, got it.
Okay,
Yep.
so we'll do the other side as well. And I'm going to just start by feeding it in through the other side. So that's how they differ. One comes in one side, one comes in the other. So this one, I put it in and out. And this one, I'm going to start it over here and do it the other direction. Okay, so the one thing about this is you want to make sure that your channel is big enough to house both of these, okay? So the pattern works just fine.
And you don't want the cording to be so small that it's kind of cutty on your neck or around your shoulders.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or too thick. Like I had cording that was thicker than this, and it didn't work quite as well because it was kind of too thick for the channel.
Got it.
Okay, so I fed it through here. Now I'm going to feed it back through this other one. Get it to the other side. The hardest part is really getting it into that the little channel at the beginning. And when I say hard, I really mean like it took an extra second and a half. Okay. And we're going to get this all the way across. All right, here it comes. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to pull this so that the circle comes like this. Okay, so these are the two swoops. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing here. Feed one of these through that little loop we made. Go ahead and tie these in a knot. And then we want to make sure that they're fairly even. And kind of, by looking at them, you can kind of figure out how tight you need to make it. Okay, those seem pretty good. I'm going to give each one of those a good tug. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut off the ends. And then they will look a little cuter than just the taped ends down there.
Oh, that's a nice finish.
Okay, so kind of open that up. There we go. And now you have a little cinch sack.
Oh, wow. That was nice.
Cute, right? So inside we have a little pocket. Okay, cinched up. Think. There we go.
Adorable.
All right. Okay, I think we did it. Whew, despite all the blackouts, we did it. So cute little cinch sack, totally will work to make all sorts of things. If you want to make it bigger, you can. The only thing you would do is need to change like the widths of these little guys. Oh yeah, this is the one I made it for.
Yeah,
how cute is that?
Matches. Look at
Yeah.
matchy.
I couldn't help it. It was just too cute. It needed a lovey. So now it has one. Also, can you see that? Come on and zoom in really quick again with the difference. So this one is the same design. I just changed out the threads a bunch. This one is the same design and I chose not to. So you're absolutely welcome to do either one. You just get a different look and it depends on what look you're going for and what you want to do. Okay, so I hope that helped you learn a little bit about embroidery and also how to put together a cute little cinch sack. We had a few of our BAs who made them with print fabric. You can do that as well. Like I said, you can add some applique, you can do all sorts of fun things. So I hope this helps you to use up maybe some of those scraps that you've got of Cuddle laying around in the studio after all your other projects. All right, so if you make your own, make sure you show us over on I Love Cuddle Fabric. So if you haven't joined that Facebook group, it's a really fun group of, I don't know, 21,000 people or so now that show all of their Cuddle projects. It's great. So we recommend that you join us there. Okay, it's always super fun. And then you can follow Sew Together Tuesday and Shannon Fabrics on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll get notifications every time we go live. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Next week, we'll be back with a product they'll be back with a product preview. So our folks in Los Angeles, Julie, who is usually there every Tuesday, I think, and then I think it's Diana is going to be with her this next week, and they're going to be talking about Cuddle prints from what I understand. So you'll have to join them next Tuesday, 10 a.m., same time, 10 a.m. Pacific. Join them. They'll talk to you all about the fabric and what you can do with it. Lots of inspiration and knowledge in that department. And then we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll be doing that weighted eye mask, which I'm looking
Same
forward to.
fabric time, same fabric channel.
That's right, exactly. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again in a couple weeks. Oh, but you're not leaving yet. Okay, winner. Who we got?
We have Annie Joy on YouTube, and I'm going to butcher a pronunciation, Mezja, Miesje, Folkerts on Facebook.
There we go. Maybe she'll tell us.
Beg your
When
pardon.
you email us, tell us how to pronounce your name, okay? So email us, both of you email us at info@shannonfabrics.com. Send us your mailing address and your phone number, and we will get those kits ordered up for you, get that sent out. You will enjoy your prizes when you get them, I hope. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing the video. We really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's here every week with us. So thank you so much for being here. We'll see you in a couple weeks, right? Okay, till then, happy sewing.